What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Grace of Fishing Podcast. It is so nice to be back, and we sure miss you guys. This is Johnny and
Priscilla.
And today we're talking about a subject that it is very important, especially in the month of May. And we're touching on the subject of
May is Mental Illness Awareness Month.
mental health awareness.
Mental health awareness. I think it's mental health illness, but I can look it up.
So great topic. Something that is not very touched in churches, but something that is very true, very very relevant to our society. So
You are right. Mental Health Awareness Month. Sorry, guys.
yep. So today, we actually, as you may know, we sometimes bring some of the subjects that we talk about in our youth group. And this month we talked about precisely that. We had in the last couple of weeks mentioned belonging needs, and we also mentioned habits and how certain habits can, in the long run add up to do something extremely positive or extremely negative in your life. And we want to share a verse before we go ahead and get started and dive in a little bit more. But this is found in Proverbs 4:23. And it says, above all else, guard your heart. From everything you do flows from it.
Mm-hmm. I love that verse because it reminds us to protect the very thing that, like the core of what makes us who we are. It's our heart, that's where a lot of like our motives come from, our intentions, our posture, and our hearts are obviously, like, you can think of it in a physical form. Yes, we have a beating heart, everyone has one, but in this sense we're talking about it as a more of like a spiritual aspect. And we know that we're composed of mind, body, and spirit, and we were made like that. We were not just made flesh. We were made mind, body, spirit. And it's important to recognize that we have a mind that we can control. We have control over our minds. We don't have to let it control us. And in our hearts, when we guard it and we protect it from even our own selves, when we have that awareness, we can go places. But when we don't, it can take us places. I didn't plan that, but
Absolutely. So we also have been mentioning that anything that comes out or anything that we end up doing, it starts with as a thought. Like, for example, like whenever you decide to go to the gym, you don't go to the gym because you feel like it. I'm pretty sure unless you have developed a habit to go to the gym, you don't ever feel like going to the gym. It means stress to your body, stress to your mind, putting your body to do something that it doesn't want to do, because to be quite honest, our body and our mind is always going to tell us to do what's comfortable.
I've always told you, like, why would I want to go to a place where my lungs are going to burn and my legs are going to be sore? It's funny because we have that association with the gym, but it's really good to build that habit, even if it's like on your physical self, but it's more than that. You can take it into a different aspect, and I think we're going to touch on that later.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just an example of how something can start by a thought saying, you know what, like, I want better results. I want to feel better about my body. So therefore, what can I do? And then you end up going to the gym because you know that that is one of the activities that's going to lead you to a healthier lifestyle. It's going to lead you to perhaps looking better in the future. So you start thinking about it before you start doing. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes with sin. The same thing goes with things that we end up making mistakes on, lying, and just messing up big time in our walk with God. And because it is so important that everything that gets manufactured or impregnated into our mind, if it stays there long enough and it becomes something that's rooted into your heart, eventually it will become something that goes to pass in your physical world, outside of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all starts with the thoughts that you have. And there's a verse that I want to share with you guys, and it talks about this very thing. It's in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3-5. It says, "For we live in a world For we live in the world. We do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. That's my favorite part of this. It's we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And we have that authority. Isn't it just amazing how we get to do that? We get to take every thought captive, and it doesn't have to hold us captive in this like enslaved kind of position. We can control and have authority over our minds, and when we do that, that means we recognize that we have a choice. And I talked a little bit about this in my sermon on Friday, and it's this in psychology we call it metacognition, and it's basically what that means is thinking about your thinking, sort of like Inception, where you have a dream within a dream, kind of like that movie. But it's a higher level of thinking where you think about your thinking, and what that does is it creates a little space where choice exists. And when you have that space and you allow choice to exist in the first place, then you're able to decide right from wrong, and you have essentially choice. It's not a choice until it is. That is something that I had to kind of break down and learn, because we can't let ourselves and our minds just kind of wander and take control of our flesh, because that's the first thing that the enemy wants us to do, is to listen to our flesh more than our spirit. And if you keep feeding your flesh what it wants, it's going to want the spirit things even less. But if you continue to feed the spirit with everything that's good and lovely and pure, and with everything that Jesus tells us to do, then you will be able to control the flesh much better, much easier. Mm-hmm. And remember, until it is a choice, it's not. So you first have to think about you do have choice, and that's like the most empowering thing to firstly acknowledge.
Yeah, in God's nature, He's always given us a choice, all the way from the beginning of Adam and Eve. And when you think about it, He gave them a choice, because that's a way of giving them free will. And He started with a thought. Mm-hmm. The devil came up to him and say, "You're not gonna die. He just doesn't want you to see the truth." Mm-hmm. And they didn't have no reason to believe a freaking snake. However, they started thinking about it to the point where they became sinful, in the sense of, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do exactly what God didn't tell me. I'm gonna do exactly what God told me not to do. Mm-hmm. So
there's another verse that is talking specifically about this. It's in Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 9 to 10. But you are not controlled by your sinful nature. You are controlled by the Spirit, if you have the Spirit of God living in you. And remember that those who do not have the Spirit of Christ living in them do not belong to Him at all. And Christ lives in you. So even though your body will die because of sin, the Spirit gives you life because you have been made right with God. Which is crazy, because it literally tells us right there. But you are not controlled by your sinful nature. You are controlled by the Spirit if you have the Spirit of God living in you. So that's the first step, is even having the Spirit of God living in you. And mm-hmm. How do you even do that?
And this is all gray, all this Bible verses, like, they add some truth to a bigger issue. But we know that, like, a lot of our issues, they've come from our childhood, being, going through situations that as kids we shouldn't have gone through. And this could be an imbalance in your family, not having a parental figure, not having a mother figure, not having either, or parents being too strict, being abused when you were a kid. And there are certain things that add up to our mental health that we struggle with on a daily basis. Now, it is okay to feel. It is okay to hurt. It is okay to know that all these things are true, and that there are issues that are very much caused by experiences and things that happened to us in the past. What is not okay is for you to stay in that situation. You can always seek for help. You can always pray, guys. Prayer is an amazing thing that can literally speak life or death into existence pray for your health, pray for your mental health. And a lot of times, that's just part of it, but you do sometimes need to look for help, like, in people that you trust, your pastors or a mentor, so that those people can see where is the issue actually coming from, like what are you struggling with and why, you know.
Yeah, that's important because they can give you perspective where you maybe are kind of biased because it's yourself, and then also you might be kind of lying to yourself a little bit just to see, like, no, it's not my fault. See, it's them, it's the world. And that lack of accountability is what can keep us chained to a lot of mental health issues, because we don't take accountability, we don't take control of it, and we don't have that autonomy to be able to even acknowledge it in the first place and then get better from there. So that's the first step, I would say, if you're struggling with that. And I'm not here to say that I've never struggled with any mental health issues. Like, obviously, I'm not going to say that I've been diagnosed with things because I haven't gone to the doctor, but I know that I went through a little bit of what I feel as though was a postpartum depression after I gave birth to Gabby. And that it wasn't straight after I did. It was like, at first I got 2 weeks of baby blues, which is extremely common, normal. It can happen, and it usually lasts like 2 weeks. And then after that, I was like pretty much back to a much better place emotionally. And then it wasn't until like a few weeks after that, and I could probably talk about this later because I don't want to take up all of the time to speak on this, but I did notice that I did end up going through some sad periods, really low lows. And I thought growing up and like going to school and going to college and learning about psychology and becoming a nurse, that I was like, that I had all this knowledge, that I'm not saying that I'm an expert in it at all, but I'm saying like I had knowledge enough to get by, to know what the signs and symptoms were. And that's how I kind of was able to sort of self-diagnose, which you shouldn't do. But in essence, I was like, yeah, I think I'm depressed. And it makes sense because when you give birth, you have this storm of hormones and a lot of situational things that can contribute to that, like going back to work. And I went back to work when Gabby was only 7 weeks old, pumping at work and all of that. That was really hard to do, and making sure I was keeping my milk supply and like providing for her. And I just felt like a failure, and all these things, just this overwhelming sense of hopelessness. And it was honestly pretty sad looking back on it, but I'm glad that I came out of it, and God had a major role in it, as well as my family. And I know that it was mind, body, and spirit straight up. Like that was I went through that firsthand and noticed that we are really mind, body, spirit, because if it wasn't for me improving in my, my spiritual life, I wouldn't have been able to get through that. And I really did cling on to God more. And then I also did things that helped my body physically. And I know that hormones play a role in it, and they kind of settle out after a few weeks. And as far as the mind goes, I did a lot of mind work. And guys, it takes work to have control over your mind and your brain telling you something and you want to do something else, but you know that that's not what you should be doing, and to kind of take those thoughts captive. That's what prevented me from acting on them when I felt like, yeah, I really don't want to go to work right now. I really just want to quit on the spot, and I want to be with my baby, like stuff like that. So I'm just sharing this so you guys can kind of open up to you guys about this, because I don't want anyone feeling like we're coming from a place of, oh, we've never dealt with stuff. We definitely all have in different ways. And I feel like this was the biggest part of my life that I've struggled with anything mental health related. And back to me like learning about psychology and all of that and having knowledge on it, just basic knowledge just to get through my degree. But that did not replace any help that I could have gotten. And I even looked into it, but I never went through with it, and I wish I would have. And that's also, I forgot my other point on that, but I'm going to let you talk so you can continue.
You're good.
Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna mention on that, but oh, that I remember now that I'm not immune to it. That I always thought like, oh well, depression, yeah, it's a thing that people get, like those people, like people out there, like those patients, those, and it happened to me, and it's happened to people that are close in my life that I did not ever think that they would deal with depression and anxiety. And the first time that I felt anxiety was, I didn't even know that that's what I was having, but it was after nursing school. Like I was a nurse already, and that was the first time, and I was like, why is my body acting this way? And I realized that it was my first real taste of like actual anxiety. Anyway, fun times.
And I think with, kind of diving into the subject, it just kind of goes to show that there's so much to talk about.
So much.
I think what we'll do is we'll break it down to different topics and talks about mental health.
You guys can ask questions too.
Yes, if you're struggling with something yourself and you'd like us to cover it or mention our thoughts on it, please share it with us, like in either our DM, or if you want to go ahead and just put it in the YouTube comment if you don't mind. But definitely, we want to help in any way that we can. We're not professionals, or we're not psychologists, but we do, we deal with this kind of stuff on a daily basis as far as like our growth as leaders, ministry, and like just people that are around us in our lives. So, but yeah, let's dive into this topic a little bit more. We love you guys and love to be able to share these moments with you and anyone that's listening behind the cameras and behind the microphones. And yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you on the next episode. We love you so much. See you next week. Bye bye.